China's central bank just made a move that might seem technical, but it carries global weight. The People's Bank of China announced a 0.5 percentage point cut to the reserve requirement ratio for eligible financial institutions. This cut is expected to inject around 1 trillion yuan in long-term liquidity into the market. That's roughly 139 billion US dollars, released in a single policy stroke. Most headlines labeled it as domestic easing, but under the surface this is something else entirely. This is China funding its next phase of outbound strategy, with liquidity instead of headlines. Let's break this down. The reserve requirement ratio is the amount of cash banks must hold in reserve. When it's lowered, banks have more capital available to lend or invest. It's a standard tool in monetary policy, but China rarely uses it in isolation. Instead, it aligns liquidity with larger state-driven initiatives. The timing of this cut is not a coincidence. Just days earlier, China and the United States agreed to a 90-day tariff truce. That was a political reset. Now this, the RRR cut, is the financial setup. China is aligning political space with financial space. It is buying time and simultaneously loading capital into the system. Why? Because China is getting ready to move again. Infrastructure, investment, overseas lending, industrial expansion, all of that takes fuel. And fuel in this case is long-term liquidity. The RRR cut ensures that China's policy banks, state-owned firms, and aligned financial institutions have the cash flow to move forward. And not just inside China, but outside of it. That's where this gets global. Over the last decade, China has evolved from a capital importer to a capital exporter. Whether through the Belt and Road Initiative, RMB-denominated credit lines, or infrastructure diplomacy, China has made outbound finance a pillar of its global influence strategy. But those moves require coordination and capital. The RRR cut ensures both. Policy banks like the China Development Bank and the Export-Import Bank of China now have better liquidity conditions. That means more project financing, more strategic lending, more deal acceleration, especially in BRI corridors. If you're in ASEAN, Africa, Latin America, or anywhere China is embedded, this move is your early warning. It's not flashy, but it's how the next wave starts. And if you're in Singapore, this is your moment to step in. Why? Because while the capital originates in Beijing, the deals, the contracts, the FX clearing, the regulatory compliance, the legal structures, still need to run through trusted systems. And Singapore remains one of the few global financial centers that China consistently works with. This is the back-end leverage, not the money, the management of the money. Here's what that looks like. Imagine a Chinese infrastructure company is now greenlit to start a port expansion in East Africa. The RMB-denominated financing will be facilitated by a policy bank. But the legal contracts need a neutral base. The capital flow needs FX structuring. The compliance needs cross-border clarity. Who handles that? It's not Beijing, it's Singapore. This applies to dozens of projects now being lined up in Indonesia, in Cambodia, in Central Asia. The RRR cut is the macro signal, but the micro implication is that Singapore-based professionals in law, finance, compliance, and consulting are about to be needed again. The question is, are they positioned? Singapore cannot afford to wait for capital to arrive. It must be ready to structure it. If you're a lawyer, get familiar with RMB trade financing agreements. If you're in Treasury, start onboarding RMB corridors. And if you're in FinTech, optimize your platforms for China-facing flows. And if you're a consultant, this is the time to engage Chinese clients and ASEAN partners, and offer to bridge them through Singapore. The RRR cut is a quiet policy, but its effects are loud and global. Liquidity is leverage, and China just loaded the system. If you've been waiting to see whether China would push forward again, this is your answer. They're not announcing it, they're funding it. If you want to be part of the structure behind it, we've built a private Telegram group where we share updates like these before they hit the surface. Drop a comment with "in" if you want in.